Hello! I have a bit of a problem with some of the machines that I have designed, and I decided that I need to fix it properly right now. And the problem occurs in machines that, where things happen in a cycle. And rather than timing the machine with a clock, I am timing it with a observer on a sticky piston that starts the sequence going. So this is a demonstration circuit that I just have here for experimentation. But basically, when this lever is powered, the machine is off and that piston is extended. And when I turn the lever off, the piston retracts, the observer will send a pulse, and the machine will start going in a cycle. So, like this. And then to restart the cycle, the last thing that happens, extend the piston and retracts it and sends the observer to start the sequence once again. And I have this playing a little melody just so that we can hear when things are going wrong, because I think it's easier to hear when something goes wrong than to just look for it. So now I can power this and I turn it off, right? But what happens if I turn the machine on and like that? Now I spammed the on-off switch and the machine has completely freaked out. Now, of course, you could just say that, oh, well, then don't spam your switches. But in many cases, I have machines that turn on automatically because of something else. And for example, maybe I have a farm or in the slightly modded scenario, I have autocrafters. And the autocrafters turn on and off depending on stock levels. Like if someone needs, for example, I have a tree farm and it needs a lot of TNT, so it turns on the TNT autocrafter if I need more TNT, and the TNT autocrafter in its turn turns on the sand maker. And all of these machines are actually using the same mechanism. And we can have a spam problem when things are moving around, and sometimes it just on the edge of needing more TNT, and then we use one TNT and that turns on the TNT autocrafter, and then immediately we get a new one, we turn it off again, and then we turn it on again. You can see where it's going. I can show you an example of how this circuit works in practice. I was thinking about maybe showing autocrafters or my sand maker, but those are very modded, or slightly modded. Let's just look at my tree farm. So this is my Never Wood farm. The switch, like, this is actually a thing that fixes the spam problem on the machine, but I have disabled it for now. And this is the switch. This switch retracts this piston and this observer, and the observer sends a pulse in here, and maybe we can see what's going on. But basically, the pulse goes in here. Oh, that was very fast. I wanted to talk a little bit more what was going on here. We can let it finish, and we can see this happening soon. There we go. So when the machine turns on, it turns on a clock here, it turns on another clock here, it spams a lot of bone meal, it keeps going until it detects that a tree has generated. Then when that happens, we send the signal over here, and the signal goes into this observer, and that starts the whole dispensing TNT. Yes, it's using a dispenser, not a TNT duper. It starts the whole dispensing TNT cycle that takes a while, and then this observer tower sends the signal back saying it's time to turn the machine on again with a lot of delay. And you see where this is going. This is very complicated, and the worst thing about the machine here and turning it on and off again automatically is that the cycle is not exactly a predictable length. So one way to fix the spam problem on this thing is something that I'm actually using on the Never Wood farm, although on the one on the Never Wood farm is not as simple as this one, and this is a pulse extender. So I'm not turning on and off this piston here directly. Instead, I have a pulse extender here. So it takes a while for it to depower and turn on. But likewise, when I power it on, it powers the piston immediately, but that is fine because I cannot spam anyway, because the time it takes it to turn on again is much longer than the cycle of the machine. So I can spam here as much as I want, but we're not getting a new starting signal until we give this thing some time to depower from the pulse extender, and now it's running. But you can see how this is a problem for the Never Wood farm, for example, because the Never Wood farm has an unpredictable cycle length. Here, the cycle length is very predictable, very short. So we can use a simple pulse extender. This pulse extender is probably too big. I probably only need this. Let's just see. Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely long enough to prevent any spam problems on the machine here. But on the Never Wood farm, I have it set to 40 seconds, and that's just a little bit playing with probabilities, because the longest cycle on the Never Wood farm, well, in theory, it's infinitely long, but I have seen more than 40 seconds. 45 has definitely happened, probably up to a minute. So even the pulse extender there isn't that good. So I want to solve this in a better way. But as a small digression, I just want to show you that this is not a problem just because I am doing something weird with a piston like this, even if I was just timing this with a clock, because you can imagine that there could be a clock here that is sending in pulses just often enough, and that is probably often like a better option than using this mechanism. This mechanism makes it very clear what's going on, but you could be using a clock, and a clock would make it easier to get a very tight timing if that's what you're looking for in a machine like this. But clocks have the same problem. This is, for example, just a simple repeater loop. I think I've seen, like, the first time I saw this clock was when I was a complete noob in Minecraft and Ilmango was using it. I don't know where it comes from, probably. I really like it. This is a very good design, but we can see this, right? The observer gets pushed in, it sends one pulse into this loop, and the repeaters loop it. But what happens if we spam it? And I need to spam it a little bit. It's not easy to cause this problem, but it does happen. There we go. This is my favorite state of this machine. And by the way, this doesn't just happen if you spam it. This can also happen in this clock on loading and unloading, which is very, very annoying. But yeah, now we have locked up the clock and it just doesn't work. So this has a spam problem as well. A comparator clock like this, you can hear that we're getting extra pulses that we shouldn't be getting. There we go. Now I managed to cause it to happen. So this has a spam problem as well. So these kinds of clocks also have a spam problem, and we probably want to have some kind of spam protection for them as well. But, like I said, I don't really like the pulse extender solution because, one, it isn't reliable for machines that have unpredictable cycle lengths, and two, it's just huge and bulky and ugly. So, let's try to solve it somehow. And I was thinking that we want to have some mechanism that doesn't allow the machine to turn off until we get a signal that the last step of the sequence has been triggered. And I have an idea here. And the idea is to use a latch. So a latch is, I think people sometimes call them something else. I'll call it just a latch. It's a little contraption. Looks like this. At least the version that I've seen other people use looks like this. And you can power it up here, so this redstone dust, and you can power it down here. If I power it up here, that turns off this torch and turns on this torch. And now I can spam this button here, and nothing happens. And now I can power it here, and I can spam this button, and nothing happens. And I'm thinking that this should be able to do something intelligent with stopping the signal. So what we could do here is permanently power this bit here. So this is where the signal would be coming in, powering this block, if it's safe to turn off the machine. If I add this piston here, this would be the off state. And I power this. Now the machine is on. And every time I get a signal here that allows the piston or the sticky piston here to move. But if I depower this, the last signal, because the machine is now running, or in this situation, the machine now is running because we are allowing the signal to go through the sequence. And if we depower this, the signal comes in and the sticky piston gets stuck extended, and that disables the machine. And that should be fittable in here. And that's something I did. And if you're wondering why suddenly there are a bunch of machines here that weren't in the previous shot, that's because I was trying to do this as a, let's design Redstone Live video. That completely failed. This was a little bit harder than it should have been. Anyway, back to the explanation of what's going on here. So right now, we are in the off state. I power this. So I get the latch stuck by permanently powering one part of it. And now, as you can see, it's working just fine. And I depower this. Well, I did it in the exact right moment. Let's depower it just at the beginning of the sequence. So now, and as you can see, it's entered the off state where the piston is extended in the exact right moment. The routing of redstone here is ugly, but this is not a practical machine anyway. And this can be generalized. We can just separate out the circuits there and make it look like this. So now we are in the on state, and we power this. We get the last signal. It is important that we get one last signal from the machine so that the latch is in the correct state, and the piston extends, and we're fine. And while doing some experimenting with these things here, I think I invented a new latch, but this probably has been invented before. But with target blocks, you can do exactly the same thing as, as this one. It's just two NOT gates looking at each other, so... and now I can spam this button and nothing happens, and we can lay it out like this. And this is the same mechanism as this one, so nothing happens, and then we power this, and it lets the signal through. And it's the same thing with this one. Nothing happens, and we power this, and that lets the signal through. But there is also a different layout of these that I found, in case this is too wide. This is how we want to do it. There, and this now, yeah. So this now is stuck in this state, and now it's stuck in this state. So this works too, and we can apply it in the exact same way, like this, and then we power this, or depower it. Keep mixing those two up, and yeah, it works too. And I was thinking that maybe for normal people, this exact layout isn't particularly useful. So I applied it to a clock. So the clock I showed earlier, which is just a bunch of repeaters going in a loop. And if we take the signal from here, the delay is long enough that this should be spam proof. Unfortunately, we have to set this repeater to 2 ticks. Otherwise, well, I can demonstrate what happens. So I turn it on, now the clock is running, right, and that allows it to turn off. This really is hard to see that it's actually doing something unless I put more delay on the clock. So we can see the signal like this, and as soon as this repeater turns on, I'm gonna turn off the clock, and you will see nothing happens, and it happens when this got powered. It's fast, but hopefully it was clear what was going on. Let's see this again. Turn it off now. And now it's turned off there. Unfortunately, if the delay here is too short, it's not stable anymore. So with a clock like this, and I turn it off, yeah, nothing happens. We actually need a longer pulse here. Unfortunately, if I add a repeater here like this will allow the clock to make one more cycle, which makes it not spam-proof anymore. And by the way, that burns out the torch anyway, so this doesn't work. But if we have like this and at least 2 ticks here, this is the fastest clock where this layout would work. And just as slightly more experimentation, I was thinking about how to solve that problem, and I'm not sure if I like this, but this actually does work. And I haven't tried it on a faster clock, because even though I designed it to solve the faster clock issue, I was playing too much around with quasi-connectivity. But we do something like this, we have a clock, and this note block updates the piston, which tells it that it has been quasi-powered, and the observer here is just to update the piston to tell it that, hey, the block of redstone was actually removed. So, there we go. Let's see if we can actually make this clock fast. So, let's try this like this. Alright. Well, I'm not exactly sure. No, we need to tick freeze it to actually see what's going on. So let's do that. Let's now extend this. Step by 2 ticks. Okay. That should have updated the piston now, and it should start extending now. It did. But unfortunately, we allowed the signal through. So not even a mechanism like this, based on a bud, is actually fast enough. I'd say that this is the safest way of doing this, by having at least 2 more game ticks of delay right here. I think I have now figured this out, so I need to use either a mechanism like this or a mechanism like this. I actually like this one better, or actually maybe even this one, but, well, we now have lots of options. I'm not gonna tell you which one to use if you have the same problem and want to spam protect your machines. Instead, I'm just gonna leave you with a world download here, where you can look at the experiments I've done here and see if anything applies to you. This was just me experimenting, trying to figure out a particular problem that maybe others will have, and I haven't been able to find a video or a discussion where someone is experimenting with how to spam-proof their machines. So since I couldn't find one, I made it myself. And if it's useful for you, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thanks a lot for watching, and have a good spam-proofing. Bye!